Jean Dancy had the opportunity and the privilege to be around Muhammad Ali. She was a boxing manager, and now people are telling you to write a book about your experiences being around Ali. Tell us about it. What was that like?
Well, it was one of the most exciting experiences of my life because as a little girl, all I wanted to do was meet Muhammad Ali. When I was just a child, I saw him on television one day, and he was saying he was going to knock someone out in a certain round. So I was just a little girl, and I went to my mother and I said, Mama, I said, if that boxer comes back on TV, be sure to let me know if he knocked the person out. I was just a little child, and then he really did. So then I said to my mother I wanted to meet him, and she said, you will, darling. And I said, I want to have dinner at his house. She said, you'll do that too. So, and in school, all of the papers that I wrote were about him. And I remember in the 11th grade, the teacher said, write a paper on what you will have done 10 years from now. I said, 10 years from now, we'll have had dinner at Muhammad Ali's house. And she said it was an unrealistic expectation.
Yeah.
And I ended up being a member of his Deer Lake camp. So having breakfast with him every morning.
Did you contact the teacher and said, hey, by the way?
No, but you know, there were so many articles written about me in the paper. I'm hoping she saw it, but I wanted to. That
would have been great.
I wanted to say, da, 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 da.
What was Muhammad Ali like away from the limelight, just as a person, as not only the boxing star?
That's one of the reasons I'm writing the book. Muhammad Ali was totally unlike the public Muhammad Ali. I remember the first morning that he and I had breakfast in his camp. He looked at me and he said, Jean Dancy. And I said, what? He said, you hit the big time. And I said, what do you mean? You know, I said, what do you mean? He said, you're the only female manager in the biggest camp in the world. And you're doing a great job. You know, he was always lifting me, and he was always lifting everybody else around him, though. He wasn't just lifting me, he was always lifting everybody. And he wasn't sitting around in camp saying I'm the greatest. Now, he did say it was the greatest camp in the world, but he wasn't ever boastful. And every time we went places, he would give money out. Everywhere we went, he was giving so much money out by the time to people. By the time we reached our destination, all the money in his pockets, the money was gone. And I've seen him sign autographs until his hands literally were shaking, but he wouldn't stop. I've seen him with hundreds and hundreds of people, and he wouldn't stop signing the autographs. And people often ask me, because they know I traveled with him and stuff, you know, what I think of him as a boxer. Of course, he was exciting. I mean, that Ali shuffle and even the rope-a-dope. I loved all of it. And plus, I got a chance to watch him every day spar. Can you imagine that? I got a chance to look at him every single day spar with my husband. My husband was heavyweight boxer Marty Monroe, who was number 4 in the world of heavyweights. I managed him. And I used to watch them spar every day. Can you imagine? I mean, gosh, I
Too bad there was no Snapchat, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook.
Gosh. I used to wake up, I could barely sleep because I knew I was going to watch them spar. But back to Ali. I think, though he obviously was a great boxer, I think as a person, he was much greater as a person. And even his children used to say so. And one of the other things I like for people to know is that he was probably the most affectionate dad, one of the most affectionate dads I've ever seen in my life. I remember one morning he invited me to breakfast, because he always would invite me to breakfast. And I'm not a morning person, but it was Ali. It's like, I wish he'd invite me to lunch, but hey, I'm glad. So I showed up in the kitchen at the Deer Lake. His cook Lana was there serving our food, but the difference from the day before we were alone with his cook, press from all over the world were crowded around us. And I'm like, Muhammad, and he's like, I'm a fish, this is how I live, I'm in this fish bowl. And he didn't act any differently with all of the press. We just sat there, we talked the way we always did, but what I wanted to point out about that was that his daughter Hannah, at the time was just about 3 years old, or 4, probably 4. While he was being interviewed, she jumped in his lap. He didn't say get down, he kissed her, he hugged her, and he let her just enjoy him as a dad before she jumped down. He never said, I'm doing it. He was just affectionate. He used to plant kisses on Hannah and Layla. Those were the children who were in the camp when I was there. And he planted kisses on them all the time. One of the greatest people I've ever met in my entire life.
What was the most impressive thing you've seen him do in camp, in training camp?
The most impressive thing, probably when he knew he didn't feel like it, and I remember him saying how tired he was, and we get to the gym and he'd say, it doesn't matter how tired you are. He said, greatness lives inside of you, and you do what you have to do, whether you're tired or not tired. And to me, that's the spirit of a champion. You know what I'm saying? To be able to do what you need to do whether you're tired or not, he would just do it no matter. Tired or not, he would work just as hard.
Last question. Do you have any quotes or sayings that he said that we don't know that you could share with us?
Let me see. Well, the quote that he said to me all the time was, "You're the only female boxing manager in the biggest camp in the world." He used to say that all the time to lift me and make me happy. And it was clearly one of the best experiences of my entire life.
Are you on social media these days? If people watching this video, where could they follow you?
I'm on Instagram, Gene Dancy. I'm on Instagram as Gene Dancy, and I'm on Facebook also as Gene Dancy. So it would be easy for them. And people from all over the world contact me and ask questions about him and about lots of boxes because I've been in many camps. But his, of course, and this camp too. You know, obviously I've watched Floyd as well. I answer their questions, and I love getting them, and I love answering their questions. I don't mind at all.
There you have it.
Thanks again.
What knockout do you and Roger talk about a lot?
Roger and I talk a lot about the Hearns-Hagler knockout.
Why?
Because I guess because it was so, first of all, it was one of the most exciting fights I've ever seen in my life. I don't know if you remember that fight or if you've seen it. One of the most exciting fights I've ever seen in my life. And Thomas Hearns is one of my favorite boxers. I have a top 5. Tommy is in my top 5. So that hurt me. I didn't want to see it happen. And there were a lot of men all around me, and a lot of them were rooting for Hagler. And so my husband, as I said, who was a boxer, Marty Monroe, was saying, they were trying to take it easy on me because I'm a woman. So my husband said, no, go at her, because she's going to come at you. She can take it. Give it to her. So they, after the fight was over, they're saying, so now what do you say? So now what do you say? I said, it took Thomas Hearns to have the most exciting fight in the history of boxing. It took Thomas Hearns to give Hagler that type of knockout. It took my Tommy to do it. So I wasn't deterred. I love Tommy Hearns. But Roger and I talk about that one a lot, too. Yeah, we do.
I don't know how he ever made 147. He's a giant.
Oh my gosh, just the way he moved up. But he's one of my favorites of all time.
Great person too.
Oh my gosh, Tommy Hearns, yes. But he and I have talked. Roger and I sit in for hours. We talk about this fight, that fight, what would have happened in that fight, what it would have. Oh, you know what? Let me tell you something Muhammad Ali told me that I think is really noteworthy. I called him one morning because I had gotten a call from a promoter who wanted my husband, Marty Monroe, to fight Ernie Shavers at the time. And so I called Muhammad and I said, Muhammad, my husband hasn't been in the gym long. He hasn't even been training for 2 weeks and he's been having back problems. I said, what do you say, Muhammad? I want to know what you think. So he says, well, first of all, let's look at the tail of the tape. He said, Marty's much younger than Ernie, much, much younger. Marty has a better jab than Ernie Shavers. Marty can move. Marty can do this. Marty can do that. Marty should win. He said, anything can happen in boxing. He should win. And then right before I got off the phone, he says, oh, Gene. And I said, yes. He said, I just want to share something with you. And I said, what? He said, Ernie Shavers hit harder than any man who's ever hit me. I said, harder than George Foreman? Harder than Foreman, harder than Joe Frazier. He hits harder than any man I've ever felt in the ring. Wow. I said, well, thanks so much. And of course, I'm not going to take that fight.
Yeah, that's a good manager. Stay tuned. PeaceReporting.com. Elie Seckbach reporting.